Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Wavelength.
Just because we're doing our lectures online doesn't mean that we need to then retreat and make life, all about being alone.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide.
I think there's not enough knowledge around the severity of the long-term impacts that a concussion can give you, and it's not really educated enough.
You should be having.
The minimum job search requirements is definitely problematic, and it is up to a computer to decide whether you receive your payments each month.
This is Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the combos about Adelaide you should be having. Oh my God, we are back. Feels so good. This is the first episode of the year, and the only thing that I love more than being here on a Monday night talking to you, Adelaide, is sharing the mic with the beautiful and oh so talented Grace. Welcome back.
Yes, we're officially back, and we've missed you all so much. Cass, we've been dying to get back in the studio, haven't we?
Oh my God, I have a little countdown on my phone, I'm not going to lie.
And today's the day.
Today is officially the day.
Oh, we can't get over it. And just before as well, you heard Maggie, who's just started Drive with Kale. Another very exciting thing.
She is killing it. I've been listening to her every single night, and I love hearing her.
They're killing it. So the Kale and Mag show coming your way. They're doing amazing. Before we jump in, we do need to acknowledge that we're recording Wavelength on the land of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to Kaurna people living today. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. We realised something over the break. We sit here and we talk to you every fortnight, Fresh Fam, but some of you might not know a ton about us. We decided we're going to fire off some rapid questions to each other. Cue some suspenseful music. I got some right here for us.
Set the mood. Ooh,
yeah, I like
Jeopardy,
that.
baby.
I like that.
It's good.
Alrighty, I've looked up some get to know you questions. How long have you been on Wavelength?
2 years.
Who is your favourite musical artist?
SZA.
Favourite song on Fresh right now?
It was reignited in me. I went to Laneway the other day. It's Prada by Ray.
What is your favourite movie?
I hate movies, you know that.
That's so weird. What is your favourite part of Wavelength?
I like interviewing really cool people.
Amazing.
Your turn, Cass. How long have you been on Wavelength?
2.5 years. I've hosted for 2.
Oh, look at her go. Who's your favourite musical artist?
Mac Miller.
Very good choice. And your favourite song on Fresh right now?
Liquor and Cigarette.
Now, your favourite movie?
Fantastic Mr. Fox or Gone Girl, which I think is the first time those two movies have been in the same sentence.
But they're both very good.
I completely agree.
Coming from a girl that hates movies.
It is a great choice.
Good choice. And your favourite part about being on Wavelength?
I love interviewing the most diverse people and being able to tell their stories.
It's what the whole team would say, I think, if you asked them.
Oh my God, all of them. I mean, besides working with us, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
First us.
Yeah.
And then all the interviews.
And then everything else. Yeah. Oh my God, that made me so nervous. Okay, I'm going to turn off the music now. Are we good with that?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
I hope that you know us a little bit better now. I think it may be time to start the episode. Up next, we're talking to Jamie Burcide, City Mag sexologist, about the sexualisation of women in media.
And a little bit later on, we're talking about the housing crisis, and Trevor takes you through the ramping on Wavelength Explains.
Right now, we're going to jump back into some music. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength. Cass, say it with me.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide you should be having.
Oh, it's like we never went on break.
That was so cute.
It was good. Just over a week ago, Georgie Purcell, an Animal Justice Party MP, publicly criticised Nine News after they changed her outfit and body for a news bulletin shown on live TV.
Yes, and unfortunately this is not the first we have seen of this. It was recently announced that Taylor Swift had sexually explicit deep fakes of her leaked onto the internet without her permission. To find out more, I spoke with Jamie Burcide, longtime friend of the show, fringe performer and City Mag's resident sexologist.
Let's get into it.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie Burcide, and I'm a qualified sexologist, and I'm City Mag's resident sex columnist, which is absolutely a dream come true. I love writing about things that I'm really passionate about. I talk about everything from sexual health to sex, love, and relationships. And how to have good communication with your partner around sex and sex well-being, because it's a really still quite taboo conversation starter, and I just want to inform people and make them feel confident and comfortable to have just the best sex lives that they can have.
Just over a week ago, Georgie Purcell, an Animal Justice Party MP, publicly criticised Channel 9 News after they changed her outfit and body for a news bulletin shown on live TV. How do you think the sexual objectification of female MPs, such as Georgia, impact their roles in Australian Parliament and governing bodies?
Well, it's just really sad because unfortunately, like, the sexual objectification of females in the media it's nothing new, right? Like, we've seen it constantly, trickled in media in different ways. I mean, they added a midriff to her. Like, who does that? It's wild to see such a stark contrast in the representation of females and males in Parliament. Like, they would never, ever Photoshop more skin onto a male MP, right? Like, you've never seen that. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it really just highlights the positions of power that are represented within Parliament. And because the media has such a big influence on Australian culture, the media needs to take accountability for how they cover women negatively and how it affects society. It essentially, when you sexualize a woman and you sexualize a Parliament member, mind you, so really smart, intelligent women that are doing, the best they can and trying to fight to be seen as equals. But when you get objectified that way and a media company enlarges her breasts and gives her more skin to have a more revealing outfit, it really just influences and normalizes sexism, misogyny, the gender pay gap and, the gender pay gap within politics, as well as sexual and gendered violence towards women, because it reduces us to our bodies. So whilst it might just be one photo, what it represents is so much more.
How does the portrayal of women in media, particularly when sexually objectified, contribute to and normalise sexism, misogyny and gender-based violence in Australian culture?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned before, that whilst it's just one photo, it really is the tip of the iceberg of how women are portrayed in media. And whilst, it's happening in Parliament, it's happening everywhere. And I think that it's a really important conversation for big media organisations like Channel 9 to really take accountability. They released a statement after there was a lot of backlash, obviously. And Channel 9 essentially blamed it on an AI tool within Photoshop. Photoshop doesn't just edit a midriff on someone without one human intervention or someone within Channel 9 approving that image before it went online publicly. So I think there's a lack of accountability there. But it also just opens this bigger conversation of females and consent and the way that their bodies are portrayed on media without their consent. And then, you see things like deepfakes that are coming out and Taylor Swift being objectified to deepfakes, which is essentially deepfakes are having your face or body digitally altered non-consensually to depict, most of the time, sexually explicit photos. So there's all of these things coming up around AI and technology and media and women being sexually objectified and edited without their consent. And the conversation really needs to shift.
Your article on this topic concludes with a call for Channel 9 to do better. In your view, what specific actions should media organisations take to avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes and objectification?
I think there needs to be a whole process where, you're not editing females' bodies to make them more sexual. You know what I mean? I think that there just needs to be more accountability held to these organisations to not edit photos to make women's breasts bigger. I think it's actually quite simple when you look at it. It's not actually that much of a big ask. I think they just need to really reflect and identify how differently they treat males and females within the media and then just hold them to the same standard. I think all we're really asking is to be represented and portrayed the same way that men are. I think that it's really amazing that, we're having these conversations and we're able to really hold these media organisations accountable. But I think it's really important to just be really critical of what you're actually seeing within the media. My new Fringe show coming up. I'd love anyone to be involved. It's called Cusp by Jamie Alexandra. It's essentially, in the nature of who I am, it's a sex ed cabaret show. This is the show, or the sex ed show that you already should have had. It's really fun, and I want you to think, I want you to laugh, I want you to cry, I want you to get excited. So come along, look up Cusp, and come along and have fun with me.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Fantastic interview, Cass. I think that is a super relevant and important topic that's been making the rounds at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie makes a really good point there that it's super important that we are discussing it. Obviously we're on radio, so we're not having any photos, but we still have a responsibility not to go in and edit someone's interview to make it look like a certain way, or to make them seem dumb or anything like that. That is a responsibility that takes a lot of power and a lot of trust. And I think it's really important that Channel 9 have taken responsibility, but do more to take responsibility and to ensure that this does not happen.
It's a safe space for men, women, those who identify as non-binary, for everyone. You know, let them do what they want to do. So yes, a fantastic interview and lots more coming up as well from the hard-working Wavelength team for our first episode back. So right after the break, we'll discuss the housing crisis on Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength. Before the break, we heard Jamie discussing the objectification of women in media.
Right now, Ella is talking to Mychelle Curran, the State Director for SA and Tasmania, about the housing crisis and upcoming federal government's policy to alleviate this problem. Take it away, Ella.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Could you please explain who the term low-income renters refers to?
So low-income renters are generally people who are in lowest income percentiles, largely people who are on the Commonwealth incomes and benefits, but also there are low-income earners who actually are also working, but they might be on casual wages and also receiving part benefits from the Commonwealth.
Mission Australia has made calls for Commonwealth rent assistance to increase by at least 50%. How have the government responded to this?
So we're essentially making the call for them to consider as part of their upcoming budget process. It's something which Mission Australia and a range of other community services providers, rent assistance hasn't really increased over the last few years. Whilst at the same time we've seen rents increase substantially. So just as an example, in the last 12 months in regional South Australia, rents have gone up 7.5%, and in Adelaide Metro, 7.7%, but in real terms, there are actually some locations in South Australia, for example, Noarlunga and Hackham, where we've seen rents increase by 52% and 43%. So that's over $170 or $150 a week, but Commonwealth rent assistance hasn't actually moved.
The government has committed to creating 50,000 social and affordable homes over the next 5 years. With such long wait lists for those trying to secure social housing, how do you think this policy should be improved on?
So, look, obviously we are very welcoming of those commitments for more investment. It's absolutely a step forward. We know, however, that there is, a massive shortfall in social and affordable housing. There are long waiting lists, and Australia's homelessness emergency, is increasing. We know that, currently to house everyone who needs social or affordable housing, there's a shortfall of about 640,000 dwellings. But we think that, in fact, there needs to be a commitment to 1 million dwellings, over the next 2 decades. So, we actually need to have that investment. It's not just a responsibility of the Australian government. All levels of government also need to be contributing to this.
Do you think state and territory governments should be enforcing rent caps and freezes to combat inflation pressures and the cost of living concerns?
It's a really, really hard question because, private rental is owned by, private individuals. It's something which it's driven by the market. For people who own private rental properties, they're often also paying mortgages. And one of the things that we're actually seeing through our own homelessness contract that we are involved in across the southern Adelaide suburbs is that more landlords are selling their properties, and often that's because the costs are rising for them as well. So I absolutely understand why we want to cap, why there's a call for capping rents, and that would be a great thing. But you've actually got to respond to that more broadly in another policy sense as well, because actually that might mean that landlords will exit the market as well.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
There needs to be some investment in prevention of homelessness. We know that in South Australia, again, we manage a homelessness prevention contract and we deliver services to people who are on low incomes, but we're actually also now starting to see people who are on wages, including double income wages, who are now approaching our service. Prevention is actually one way of supporting people not to fall into homelessness.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks so much for that, Ella and Mychelle. The cost of living crisis is something I think we're all so familiar with seeing and hearing the phrase of at the moment. What was it? The Cosy Livy was like the word of the year last year or something?
Yeah, which is insane and depressing.
Yeah, incredibly. So it's something that we can't stop talking about, keep the conversations going, because change has to be made.
Absolutely. And we did see last year the Reserve Bank has decided to cap the interest rate at 4.35% for the first time since May 2022. It increased 13 times since May 2022, which is insane. But they are saying now that it should be in a decrease in the December quarter to about 4.1%. They're estimating. So that is hopeful.
We'll just have to cross everything we can cross and see how, the future pans out.
Absolutely. And, there's probably not just a clear cut pathway to helping all of this. This is there's so many things that go into it, right? But if we look at the Western Australia, they did bring out a new incentive recently of $10,000 to property owners to increase from a short stay to a traditional rent market on like Airbnb homes and those kind of things to help the rental market there. And I think that that's really important. I think it only got done in November 2023. So there's probably not a lot of statistics on it now, but if it is something that is really successful, I do hope that the South Australian government looks into it.
Hopefully a step in the right direction, but time will tell, and if any big changes happen, Wavelength will cover it.
We'll let you know. Right after the break, Trevor takes you through ramping on Wavelength Explains. You're on Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
You're here on Wavelength on Fresh 92.7. You've probably heard of the term ramping in the news a lot, but what actually is it? Trevor, take it away.
Wavelength Explains on Fresh 92.7.
Ambulance ramping is at a nationwide crisis across Australia, with lack of beds, nurses, drivers and transportation automobiles. In March 2022, Peter Malinowskis launched his Labor campaign for Premier, which promised that 300 additional beds and nurses would be put in place in hospitals around the state. The lack of capacity in our hospitals is still a concerning issue, although some work and funding has been put in play, as the now state Premier also put in motion that all the funds for the upcoming Adelaide basketball stadium were removed and placed into the ramping crisis across the state. But as of on December 27th, 2023, a Hectorville man in his mid-50s living with a disability sadly passed away after waiting approximately 10 hours for an ambulance to arrive. The 000 emergency number to reach the ambulance was called 3 times from the home before there was any attendance from the ambulance. The Ambulance Employees Association Union have said that the ramping is to blame for the agonising death of the eastern suburbs man. This is one of many examples of the current ramping crisis in South Australia, as good and bad results came from 2023, with the state government in November last year releasing statistics that ambulances spent 4,285 hours outside hospital entrances waiting to admit patients, which was at a high since March 2023. But due to the help since the winter of 2023 has been improved since winter 2022 by 1,084 hours less ramping in 2022. Does this mean more beds and staff within the hospitals are needed? As data shows that last year in 2023, the paramedics reached approximately 67% of their cases, whether in 2022 they only reached in the 50s. If you seek medical assistance in an emergency, please call 000.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Trevor. We've actually spoken about ramping several times before. You, Cass, you've interviewed Peter Malinowskis before as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did speak to him just after he got elected in 2022, and he did mention the 300 beds and nurses and how it's more of a complicated issue than we expect. And it's unfortunate that now, 2 years on, wow, we're in 2024, how crazy, that it's still an issue and people are still dying from this. It's so unfortunate. The healthcare system has gone through a lot in the past 5 years. So I'm really hoping that there is a pathway out.
Yeah, we've heard so many promises and we can just hope that there is hope on the horizon. Obviously, we're not in charge of the budgets, but, hopefully behind the scenes some strings are being pulled so this won't be an issue in 2025.
Absolutely.
But let's keep this going and jump into some music. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
You're here with Cass and Grace on Wavelength. Right now, it is actually Grace's favourite segment of the show. It's Heaps Good News.
Jasmine, take it away.
I know there's gonna be
Heaps Good News on Wavelength.
Welcome back to Heaps Good News. It's a new year, not new me, because I've already given up on my resolutions. But you know what doesn't end? Good stories. So let's get into it. Public transport in SA is set to become more accessible for South Australians soon with new technology that is currently being trialled with Adelaide Metro. See Me is an app created by software programmer Cassie Hames, who is legally blind. She was motivated to create the app after frustratingly being left constantly at bus stops by drivers who may not have noticed or overlooked her waiting. With See Me, the app will be able to link to a bus's onboard system that will digitally notify the driver that someone is waiting, and a passenger can then receive a spoken, haptic and visual alert that the bus is arriving. The project, which has just been awarded the Initiative of the Year at 2023's Accessibility Australia Access Awards, is a great way to empower people when using public transport by making it more accessible for all. The Adelaide Trail will be set to run on the Adelaide Metro Free City Connector buses from Monday to Friday over the next 6 months. If you visited Brighton Beach the other day, you may have thought you were seeing double or rather hundreds when seeing 664 Marilyn Monroes going for a dip. The Marilyn Jetty Swim makes a big splash every year with the event raising funds on World Cancer Day. Starting 11 years ago, the fundraiser was started by Sarah Tinney in memory of her late mother and is now not only celebrated for her but for everyone else that is affected by cancer every year. This year broke records not just in attendance, with most Marilyns taking the plunge this year, but an amazing first of over $330,000 raised for the Cancer Council of SA. So Australia has the highest rates of autism diagnoses in the world. In fact, in 2018 alone, it was recorded that over 205,000 people in Australia have autism. That, of course, would definitely be more now, and that's not even including those who haven't even been diagnosed yet. After South Australia appointed the national first position of Assistant Minister for Autism in 2022, the state has continued to work towards supporting families easier with another new program. This new program will target families with children between 6 to 18 months old, a peak time for brain development for us little humans, and where the first signs of autism is typically spotted. Experts will work with parents and caregivers of at least 1,300 families to educate them in better understanding their kids' unique behaviours and feelings in a way to hopefully improve the future for those with an early diagnosis. Hopefully, if this initiative works for this demographic, it would be amazing to see it offered for more people in the future.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Jasmine. And that brings us to the end of the show tonight, the first one back. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on everywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the others. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, or tonight's episode will be up soon.
Right after us, Jeep with Easy G is coming into the studio, and wow, that was our first episode. We're back. The nerves are gone a little bit. I'm excited.
Speak for yourself.
It's going to take me a couple of days, I think, to kind of come down from this high, which I love. I love coming into the studio. We both love coming in and talking to the Fresh fam. And next episode, we have a very special episode.
I was going to say, little teaser. We're really excited for the next one.
We are so excited. Do you want to tell them about it? A little sneak peek?
Look, if you like the Fringe, you'll like the episode. Let's leave it at that.
That was a little sneak peek. Sneak peek. I wonder what we're going to be talking about. Keep it on Fresh.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.